Hello and welcome to our third session of our series entitled What Would Jesus Do? The pandemic has its impact not just on the wealth, that is the economy, but also our health. Not just the physical health, but also the mental health. There has been a steep rise in the cases related to stress, anxiety and frustration with an overall adverse impact on our health. Families and youth in particular have been hard hit and many are struggling to cope with the breakdown in communication and relationships. Join me and Pastor Thomas as we together ask this question: what would Jesus do amidst the rise in cases related to mental health? We are surrounded by issues that is above us and beyond us. Issues that not only baffle us but also bring about a sense of hopelessness. A question I often have thought about while facing these issues is, what would Jesus do? What would He do in the pandemic? What would He do help us with the mental health problems? What would He do if He had lost His job? Join me with our guest, Pr Skaria, as we together ask, what would Jesus do? Well, there's no doubt that the pandemic has adversely impacted the mental health big time. Since March 2020, there has been a 20% rise in cases related to stress, anxiety and frustration.
Oh, absolutely, I think, Roji. In fact, the impact on health, and especially mental health, can be very, very debilitating. Having spoken to a few people who themselves were down with COVID-19, now I think that the impact it has on your mental health is far more adverse than what COVID-19 can do to your physical health. When one is told that he or she suffered from COVID-19, the impact it takes on their mental health is far more, reaching in its emotional ramifications. So I think what affects the body affects the mental health and the social health, and vice versa too. And what affects your mental health affects your physical health as well. Now, health most often time is perceived as only physical health. But you would know that we're more than just physical beings, aren't we? We are emotional, social, and physical beings. We have more than one dimension to ourselves. And as a matter of fact, WHO defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So being healthy is not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. To be healthy, one must be well in all the aspects, including physical, mental, and the social well-being too. And if I may add, the spiritual wellness too into all of this other aspect. So if you're feeling mentally worn out today or emotionally drained, may I say this, it is very common, especially in a crisis we are globally in at this moment, because what affects your physical health affects your mental health, what affects your mental health affects your physical health as well.
We have also read that many families being hard hit and finding it very difficult to cope with breakdown in communication and relationships. What's your take?
Of course I would think. The other day someone asked me if we are all well, and I jokingly said, oh yeah, we're trying to keep away from the well. Now, this season did feel like being in the well, didn't it? Can you imagine being locked inside the house for past 4 to 6 months, and that too with children, and for some of us with our extended families? No vacations, no eating out, no street food, no balle papadis, and no pani puris or golgappes. It's just been extremely difficult. Now, don't tell me you haven't already stepped on each other's toes as spouses, or a bit of a squabble with your children now and then. Come on, I did. Get irritated and frustrated just being inside the house, not being able to go out. Now, if you're someone who have lost your job or your salary has been slashed, it has even been more depressing, isn't it? And hear me loud here. It is very normal, it is very natural to feel being hard hit or irritated or frustrated, or even this weird feeling of a sense of breakdown. Now, here is the interesting thing about crisis. You are either in a crisis, or you're getting out of a crisis, or you're just about to get into a crisis. And of course, we've been in a global crisis, and with the whole world in it at the same time. We can't run away from it. If you run, where do you really run? The whole world is affected at the same time. But you see, not all of us deal with crisis the same way. We all have different coping mechanisms or coping capacities for that instance. Some may do well, and some may not really cope up well under the same given circumstances. So the first step to recovery is to perhaps admit that we are in a crisis, that I am in a crisis. It is normal to feel, as I said, defeated and worn out and frustrated and stressed out and to step on each other's toes. And of course, if you are someone like that, one thing you must do is, of course, to first admit that you are in a crisis, you are in a breakdown, but also to ask for help. Always look for help outside. Look for a friend whom you can talk to, with whom you can share your feelings. Talk it out. At best, I would suggest consult a counselor, a mental health professional. Well, do remember, talking your feelings, venting your emotions goes a long way in getting you back onto the track of recovery.
Now, Pastor Thomas, you have a family, 2 beautiful children. You have been in this pandemic. How have you coped up with this season?
Oh, well, can I tell you the truth? It has been very, very difficult. Even as we have cared for many and done a lot of counseling sessions, we ourselves have felt worn out many, many times. And again, hear me out, it is natural as caregivers to be worn out. Caregivers also need care. So we just had to admit that we were burning out and we needed to stop and take a break as a family. So Atun and I have gone for long cycle rides. I've had my me time where I sat and watched a good movie while the family slept. Of course, we as a family have watched some good movies too together over popcorns. We converted one of our dining tables to a table tennis table and played a lot of table tennis on it. Cooked some crazy stuff in the kitchen and of course played some cricket on our terrace as well. Now, catch me when I say this. You have to be very intentional in breaking away from the pity me mold and embrace your today with enthusiasm. You and I have many reasons to be upset and stressed about, don't we? But here is where you have to choose not to be swept by the tide, but learn how to ride on the tide of time.
As I talk to others, I realize that work-life balance has also led to a lot of stress. Is that true? Has the balance gone off for a toss?
Absolutely, Roji, I would think so. You see, before the lockdown, most of us traveled, didn't we? And because we traveled, we at least changed seats on an airplane or on a train. Or we took taxis, didn't we? We waited at the airport and other places. We had somehow gotten this in between times and had a bit of a recovery time too. But now it is the same chair but different Zoom IDs, and some of us have been Zooming all day, and some of our chairs are perhaps literally crying out for a break. So what may really work to create a life and work balance? This is what I would do. First, I would think demarcate your workspace, and I think that's very important. Turn a room into a workspace and limit your work to that room only. Do not bring your work out of that room. Second, I would think exit that room when your work is done. And of course, maintain your work hours. Don't work 24/7. Work can always be demanding and can always be there, but just ensure you are not at work 24/7. Now, this is a difficult one. Switch off your phone after your work hours. I can hear some of you say, well, impossible. Well, do you know why I say that? Because unless you disconnect from the world around you, you will not connect with the world inside you. And the world inside you include your spouse, your kids, and of course your immediate family members as well. They're really waiting for you outside so that they would have some good time with you. Now, don't let them hate your work. And of course, you should get some good exercise, maintain a regime. It could either be in the morning or in the evening. And some of you, it could be in the afternoons. But you see, you have to exercise. We have to exercise because a healthy body contributes to healthy emotions and a good mental state as well. And last, of course, have lots and lots of fun and laugh and huddle and cuddle together with one another in the house. It's truly going to be helpful long way, I would think.
Also, stress and frustration has gone to the next level of people taking their own lives. The story of Sushant Singh Rajput was indeed very saddening, isn't it?
Oh yes, Roji. I was very saddened with the death of Sushant Rajput. In fact, we as a family watched a movie by him recently. What a brilliant actor he was. Now, not just Sushant, but I think many who took their lives in this season and their names came up and kept cropping up on the television, didn't it? By the way, suicide has been one of the top 10 causes of death in the world. It has been one of the top 10 cases of death in the world. Just that now a lot of news coverage has been given to this particular episodes of suicide that cropped up, but it's been there. People have been struggling with suicide for a long, long time. But I think this is a good time to act and probably to shun away the stigma that is attached to it. So what can we do? First, I think we must recognize that any one of us can break down. Any one of us can break down. Well, we break down physically, don't we? We break down emotionally and mentally as well. And when we break down physically, what do? We go to a doctor and it's perfectly all right. But when we break down mentally and emotionally, we don't like to go to a psychiatrist or get professional help. And that is because of the stigma attached to it. So I think this is a good time for us to come together as a community and make a world a better place where it is okay to get emotional help, and getting emotional help is considered to be okay.
How can we help those who perhaps know someone with suicidal tendencies?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, Roji, because we all can help and help each other. First, I think we should understand what suicide is. Suicide is but a desperate attempt to escape suffering that has now become unbearable. The person is often blinded by feeling of self-loathing and hopelessness and, of course, isolation. You see, a suicidal person can't see any way of finding relief except through death or by taking his or her life. Now, you and I may see many options, but the other person does not. Well, did you know most suicidal people are deeply conflicted about ending their own lives? They wish they don't. But then they also wish there was an alternative to suicide, but they just can't see it and therefore they attempt suicide. Now, can I be honest? Who of us have not thought about taking our life at least once, didn't we, because of the pressures and the crises of life that was brought upon us? Well, the point is, when we are pressed then emotionally, what can you and I do? What can you and I do to help a person who's probably struggling with the thoughts of suicide? First, I would think a person who commits suicide does not commit suicide overnight. He or she very meticulously plans it, very carefully strategizes it. They will in fact give you clues such as they might say, well, I don't feel like living. You'll be sorry when I'm gone. What if I jump off from a building? Now, please understand, you ask any family member whose member has committed suicide or has attempted suicide, they will confess to the signs being given to them. But when this person tells them this, often family members would brush it aside, thinking, well, the person is joking. He is not serious at all. But you see, when you hear statements like this, one must prod and inquire further. Second, I think the suicidal person may also isolate themselves. They stop interacting, become irritable, lose appetite, gaze at things as if he or she is completely lost. Some may even just act very normal on the outside. Third, let me shock you by saying this. It is absolutely okay to ask the other person who is probably going through the signs to say, well, are you about to commit suicide? Have you thought about it? And believe me, you will not infuse the thought of suicide by asking this question, but you might instead uncover a plan that they might really be thinking and planning about. Another thing that you should do is to listen to them without judging them. And of course, remind them that there is no problem under the heaven, that is no solution. Well, you might not see it now, but just because you do not see it now does not mean that the solution is not there. Now remember, the other person is not the problem. The other person must be reminded that they are deeply loved and valued and their life does matter. And of course, last but not the least, do not hesitate to get professional help or to meet a professional health worker who can really be of great help to this person.
What advice would you give to those who themselves are struggling with suicidal tendencies?
Well, I had this girl who wrote to me an email once, and an email to an ID that I normally don't look up. And this is what she wrote. If you ever read this email, please know that I'm gone by the time you have read this. Oh my goodness. When I read it, I was deeply shocked because I had read it after a few weeks of her writing it. And I had no way of reaching back to her. So I remember writing back to her and saying, well, if you read this mail, please do respond. Now, fortunately, she did. She hadn't taken her life. Now, if you're someone out there thinking and planning to take your life, this is what I would like to tell you as your friend. Please give yourself a second chance. Yes, you may not see a solution out there, but just because you do not see it does not mean that there is no solution. There is solution to every problem under the heaven. Please find someone to talk to. It will help you a long way. Please resist the temptation to isolate yourself. But you see, remember that we are complex human beings, complex emotionally and mentally as well. So a person to talk to will certainly help you more than you and I can imagine. If you can consult a counselor or a psychologist, please, for heaven's sake, do take help. Also remember, taking one's life is easy, but living one's life is very difficult. But life is worth living, not just for yourself, but for people around you. Also remember, life is tough, but God is good. And with the help of the Almighty, you can have a wonderful life. Lastly, can I say this? You are a person for whom Jesus Christ gave his life. And therefore, you do not have to take your life when life already has been given to you. You're deeply loved and valued by your Creator, by your Maker. And therefore, I think you have all the reasons to live your life and live it in the abundance that God brings to you. And therefore, please consider giving yourself another chance, for life in itself is very worth living.
Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. If you did enjoy the conversation, make sure to like, share and also comment down below. And please don't forget to subscribe to Kingdom Culture. Stay tuned for more videos.